am very excited about this show. Today's guest is John Wiswell. Him, a disabled author who lives where New York keeps all its trees, way up north. He won the 2020 Nebula Award for Best Short Story for Open House on Haunted Hill and the 2021 Locus Award for Best Novelette. That Story Isn't the Story. His work has also been a finalist for the Hugo, World Fantasy, and British Fantasy Awards. His work has been translated into 11 languages. His debut novel, Someone You Can Build a Nest In, came out in 2024, and I would like to take credit. I believe I was the first person to nominate it for the Nebula. I love this book so much. I used in my review the word masterpiece very carefully. Like, it is a brilliant book. The ending, I will not spoil it for anyone, but the ending is so satisfying. So check out Someone to Build a. When I saw it on store shelves, I'm two books through a paranormal series myself, and I just was like, I must have this. And it's so the cover's beautiful. The cover artist, I mean, they grabbed me. So check out Someone You Can Build a Nest In, and you have another novel coming up very soon, Wearing the Lion. And I got to read an ARC, so we could talk about that one too. So congratulations on that one.
Thank you so much. And it's a delight to be here. I'm really happy to talk with you this morning.
Yes, so let's talk. Well, actually, let's talk about the Someone You Can Build a Nest In, because that one, before this show airs, no, just after the show airs, we're right in between here. We'll find out about the Nebula Award for that one, but already the Hugo, right?
The Hugos are in August.
In August, okay, but it is nominated for a Hugo as well, and
Yes.
I would not be at all surprised if it is a clean sweep. This book is so great. So, how has that? I mean, writing is such an interesting field because some people get competitive about it, and it's really
Mhm.
not competitive. We're competing with Netflix. Like, if somebody loves your book and therefore reads my book, if they find we're an incredibly supportive community, or at least we should be. And yet you've achieved this level where now it is getting competitive. Oh, I mean, when you look at those other folks who are nominees, that has got to feel so satisfying in and of itself.
Yes. I to be put on a level with Kelly Link is, I'll say, it feels absurd. Uh because Kelly Link is an influence on me. I have loved her short fiction for longer than I have been publishing short fiction myself. And I loved the Book of Love. I am a big fan of most of the finalists in most of the categories. I adore that Evgenia Trantafilou is up against herself in on for multiple awards
Yeah.
across the spectrum this year. Uh, I view storytelling as a communal effect. We do this not just to tell stories to others, but to inspire each other to tell our stories. I am not a writer because I am singularly brilliant. I am a writer because I grew up reading, I don't know, Tolkien and Douglas Adams, and then grew into reading Ted Chiang and Kelly Link, and now love reading Evgenia Triantafilou and Adrian Tchaikovsky. I don't write out of a vacuum.
Yeah.
So to me, the honor is to be nominated and to be able to celebrate my fellow nominees, and then to help raise other voices up, because every year, especially in the short fiction world, amazing voices from niches you haven't heard of break out. And if you're paying attention, you get enriched. I am a big fan of emerging voices like Dominic Dickey, who's a fantastic horror writer. Guan Un, who's an Australian sci-fi writer. They're writers of short fiction, which I adore. Of course, I wrote it for much longer than I've been publishing it for much longer than I've been publishing novels. So to be honored by a community like SIFWA, to have my fellow writers say, "We loved your book so much, we would like to put it on a pedestal for a while." It's an amazing honor. It is also an opportunity sometimes to do like what I just did, which is to shout out people who haven't been put on that pedestal yet. I expect golden things for the likes of a Dominic Dickey or Thomas. Well, Thomas Ha actually now has broken out into the award circuit too. Well deserved. He's phenomenal. He just can't stop publishing really good stuff. Uh, but so it is a delight, and it is an honor, and it is humbling, but it's also invigorating to get to be in conversation with other authors who have inspired me or are just inspiring me now. It's a communal thing. Storytelling has always been a communal thing. That's why we have it as a species.
Well, and that's an excellent segue into Wearing the Lion. So you chose to tell a story that is a Greek myth. And I mean, the Greeks very much recognize storytelling is a communal enterprise, going back to Greek theater. But what brought you to telling the story of Heracles and Hera?
Um, Thank you for asking. Yes, I one of the first stories my parents ever read me were the Labors of Heracles, and he seemed like a pretty cool guy. He went to a lot of places. He did a lot of stuff. Sometimes it was messed up stuff. Uh,
Yes.
uh, but I found him so compelling and otherworldly a figure. And then you learn about Greek history, and you realize, oh, they viewed him as otherworldly despite intimate as well.
Yeah.
That he was a figure of culture, but also outside of culture. The whole purpose of a demigod, right, is the bridge between the mortal and the divine. Uh, and yet, there were things about his myth and then about other myths that always stick out to you because the beautiful thing about mythological retellings is there are always gaps. What don't we tell when we tell these stories? And one of the gaps in the Heracles story that always stuck out to me was that uh, the Furies come and drive him mad and make him slay his family. And then in his despair, he goes upon the 12 labors to get atonement. And then he, on the labors and ever afterwards, never seems sorry once. He just does cool things. And one assumes that he was supposed to feel bad at some point, but it doesn't really affect anything that he's doing outside of it was his motive to go do cool things, which then becomes his legend. It is not the legend of a grieving father. It is the legend of a dude who was super cool,
Yeah.
which he would not have agreed with.
Right.
That is something Heracles would have disagreed with. A second gap that always perplexed me is that Hera causes the labors and then checks out.
Yeah.
And even if you're like, okay, I guess Hera is not the big bad of the Heracles story, what is she doing for
Yeah.
that time period? What is Hera's life like? What is Hera's existence? Hera often gets shortchanged in the myths.
Yes.
She is often a calcified image of what the rich didn't like about their wives. She is she is a satirical foil. It's more seldom that someone like Homer breathes a cunning life into her existence. So I wanted to explore her relationship with Heracles and then Heracles' relationship with her from a very different angle. So
Yes.
the the premise of Wearing the Lion, if you all haven't figured out, is a retelling that entwines Hera and Heracles very rigorously. Hera is the goddess of family who orders the Furies go make Heracles kill himself, and then he accidentally kills his family instead, and then comes to and it's like, I have destroyed my life and I have sinned in front of Hera, and I'll never be able to make this up to her. And of course, she's meanwhile up in heaven going like, oh no, oh no, what
Well,
did
and
I
one of
do?
the things I loved about the book is that had to be handled so delicately because on the one hand, I felt this sense that they were deeply grieving. On the other hand, the book is funny, but that's not funny. Like, and that's a
Right.
tricky thing to pull off. Like, this horrible thing has happened, not just to him, she regrets. And, is going through her own kind of penitent journey over the course of the book. But there's a lot of humor. But that's not the funny part. And I thought you pulled that off very, very well. That was really tricky.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the truth of the matter is that the absurd and the funny and the profane do not wait for us to finish grieving.
Yeah,
Uh, George Carlin continues to perform no matter what horrible events are in the news until those events are gone, and so is George.
yeah,
So the question then was how to balance life. To me, these things do exist within a balance. The Mel Brooks quote that tragedy is when something bad happens to me. Uh, Comedy is when it happens to you.
yeah,
Uh, so what I wanted to explore was these other characters who offer angles on life. Now Hera doesn't realize how funny she is for a
right.
while because of our mortal angle on her. But Heracles, because he can't bring himself to do violence ever again, He has this impossible strength, but why would he ever use it to do harm? These hands ended the lives of my children. I feel like a monster. Turn around and is told, go slay these monsters, and he can't bring himself to do it. In fact, he winds up communing with them because they are the closest thing in the world to how he feels himself. And so there's this kinship with the supernatural creatures who are outside of society, much as he now feels, but they are quite absurd creatures some of the time. And they have very different experiences of tragedy and violence than he does. And so, to some degree, they offer some kind of comfort in that they are over the top or strange. In other ways, they offer a grounding effect because they understand what he's been through. They're just at different phases in hardship than he is. So there's this communal nature, which is, of course, what we've been talking about the entire interview.
Right.
And on the flip side, then Hera, goddess of family, starts to finally look around at her family and ask, like, is this how have I been using my authority in my divine family?
How do I
And
repair these relationships that I didn't even realize were deeply unhealthy?
yes, because another issue is gods are never asked or seldom asked to grow.
Yeah.
What happens when a god becomes uncomfortable with their station and desires to be something other? And Hera was this beautiful window into that. I loved writing her just as much as I loved writing Heracles.
Well, and one of the things that I found myself wondering as I was reading it is, when we're kids, we're exposed to a very kid-friendly version of these myths. Do you even remember which version your folks read to you? I mean, as a kid, I had what was the beautiful art book that was the large book of oh, I'm trying to remember the author's name.
Hamilton?
And then, college, you get Edith Hamilton,
Yeah.
which again, it kind of glosses over. I mean, characters just disappear frequently because, which is not a knock on Edith Hamilton. She's telling these huge sweeping stories. Did you find yourself like trying to wrangle 100 versions, or did you go, I know enough of this to retell this story, or was there a ton of research involved?
Oh, I did a ton of research. I mean, the versions that my parents read to me when I was little were just the copies that were in the library. So they could be kind of brutal. I remember my dad kind of like not liking reading these stories to me because they were a little too grim for him. Um, but I don't know. I think that that was ultimately beneficial for me. I would rather children be introduced to reality bit by bit rather than everything having the edges softened off of them the entire time and then hitting the horrible shock
Yeah.
when reality arrives. My first day of college was 9/11.
Oh,
Uh, it was a really horrible awakening for a lot of people. Um, and different folks in our class had different levels of exposure to trauma, and we had to help each other and counsel each other. But anyway, that is merely an anecdote about how one is introduced to heavy matters, and mythology, classic mythology, can be that. Uh, Also, the versions that tend to be read to me were of the simple Edith Hamilton variety, where there are tons of gaps, which I think are great for kids because they invite imagination. What is supposed to go between these gaps or go into these gaps? And I think those are actually great for kids. But yes, I mean I've been reading classics my entire life. I like Euripides. I have a very soft spot for Sophocles. Aristophanes is the weird one. Um, and so I had done a lot of reading, but I did additional reading for this to try to look at how different regions of Greece over the ages uh, handled the characters and what got written and what got written out and what got changed. It's very funny that like Euripides' version is the family dies after he's done with the labors. You're like, what was he doing the labors for then, man?
right.
Oh, this is fascinating that it's so different. And sometimes the inconsistencies between versions give you an artistic license. For instance, there's one trope I'm not particularly fond of. It's called fridging, where you kill off a character's significant other or family for pathos, which is the foundation of the Heracles myth, but it's particularly usually a male character's wife is fridged. When you realize that, like in half of the classics, his wife is not killed, you're like, oh, this is an opportunity to do so much more with grief and bonding and support and coming and drifting apart. There's so much more emotional reality if there are two parents reflecting on what's happened. Uh,
And
that
the way you
I love the inconsistencies.
yeah.